Bona tarda, benvingudes i benvinguts a un nou webinar de claustre obert a la recerca educativa, l'entorn i la mirada internacional. Un cicle de la Direcció General d'Innovació, Recerca i Cultura Digital del Departament d'Educació de la Generalitat de Catalunya. En aquesta ocasió, i també en el webinar del passat dijous dia 3, l'organització s'ha realitzat conjuntament amb el Consolat General dels Estats Units a Barcelona i també amb la col·laboració de la STEAM Conference a Barcelona. El webinar d'avui es titula Invent to Learn, Making, Tinkering and Engineering in the Classroom or Anywhere. És a dir, inventar per aprendre, making, tinkering, enginyeria a l'aula o a fora de l'aula. I comptem amb la presència de la Sylvia Martínez. La Sylvia és assessora principal de Fab Learn Fellows a la Universitat de Columbia, un espai dedicat a impulsar l'educació maker. És enginyera aeroespacial de formació, però s'ha dedicat professionalment al món de l'educació. Ha treballat en la producció de programari educatiu i ha exercit com a vicepresidenta d'una empresa de videojocs. Durant una dècada també va presidir la generació Yes, una iniciativa sense ànim de lucre que proporciona als educadors les eines necessàries per situar els estudiants en funcions de lideratge a les seves escoles i comunitats. La Sylvia realitza tallers i conferències arreu del món, és coautora del llibre Invent to Learn, Making, Tinkering and Engineering in the Classroom, un llibre que és considerat un referent del moviment maker a les aules, i en el qual la Sylvia explica l'aprenentatge innovador a través de la tecnologia, l'experiència creativa i el disseny aplicat a solucions de problemes reals. Ara la Sylvia ens farà una presentació durant uns 15 minuts en anglès i després li farem unes preguntes per aprofundir en aspectes pedagògics. I finalment tindrem un torn obert de preguntes que es podran realitzar des del xat de YouTube. Així doncs, comencem amb la Sylvia. Welcome. We are very happy. We are very glad to have you here. And we are also happy that you are joining us to share your experience. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the wonderful welcome.
Okay, so please feel free to launch your presentation.
Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about the maker movement and the idea that we can bring some of these amazing tools and technology of the maker movement into the classroom, and how this kind of tool and methodology and mindset prepare us for the future. And we're going through a time now that we're very much up in the air about what's happening with school and how to do school remotely or with kids face to face, or maybe both at the same time. And just to share a little bit, I want to make clear that this is about something that can be done right today with kids in our classroom. Now, this is something, the maker movement. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say, first of all, that everything I mention, all the tools and technology, is in a virtual handout at my website, inventtolearn.com/questions. So you don't have to take notes or anything like that. You can get to this link at any time. So the maker movement is something that you may know a lot about. You may be using maker tools and technology in your classroom, or you may know nothing about, and that's fine. It's fairly new and it's happening right now all around us. It's a kind of global and collective way to learn and to do things for yourself, to reinvent, to recycle, using tools like 3D printers. And you can use a 3D printer to build an entire house, or maybe to invent something like a prosthetic that you need and can't afford. But the magical part of this is that these designs, big and small, can be shared worldwide through the internet. And when you share, it means other people can make them better and share them again. This is something that people of all ages are participating in community maker spaces and hacker spaces in schools all over the world. And this is part of the continuing industrial revolution that started with the steam engine, which changed the way people work, and it's gone through a digital revolution and is progressing into the future with even more tools and technology and inventions. But the thing is, we can invite kids to participate in this today. Because every time something new is invented in these industrial revolution, it changes the way the world is worked. It changes the way the world works and that people work, but it also changes the way people learn. And that's what's happening today. So I think that making is a framework that we can use today, and it points to the future of how people really learn. Now, the book that I wrote, Invent to Learn, Making Tinkering and Engineering in the Classroom, this I co-authored with Gary Steger. We make the case for hands-on, minds-on learning. And now this isn't new. This is something that people believe in, that children of all ages, students, should have access to meaningful and authentic tasks as they learn and grow. And by the way, this book is translated into Spanish. So if you'd like to get a copy in either language. In the book, we talk about the tools, the kinds of tools that are available and the ones that are most appropriate to bring into the classroom. Computer-controlled fabrication, like 3D printers or laser cutters, physical computing, the connection of the digital and physical world, like robots or wearable technology, or these microcomputers that can add intelligence to anything, and programming. Now, it's not just about the technology. It's also about the kind of mindset that you get when you're trying something new, when you say, I don't know how to do this, but together we're going to learn and figure it out. And your team may be the person sitting next to you, or maybe remote or across the globe, or someone you've never met. But this maker mindset that you can do it and that trying is the best, even if you don't exactly know what the outcome is going to be, is a very powerful stance towards learning. And then this also goes along with the methodology in the classroom, a pedagogy that you could call project-based learning or design thinking or iterative design. But I like to call it tinkering, because I think tinkering is a word that has bad meanings, especially in translation around the world. People think it means just sort of fooling around without purpose, not knowing where you're going, not caring where you're going. But honestly, tinkering can be a mindful exploration. It's how inventors work. It's how you design. It's how you prototype. It's how you share things and think about them in a global sense. And this is the way that scientists and engineers really do their work. Now, you can take making, tinkering, and engineering and apply it to almost anything you want students to learn. You can directly apply it to curriculum topics. You can say, make anything you want. You can bring an artistic element to your tinkering and engineering. And you can also ask the kids to empathize with someone, make something for someone they care about, make something that improves the world, because kids care deeply about the world that they're going to inherit. And we can give them the tools to help them feel like they can be in charge of this future. And I truly believe they can and will make the world a better place. And we can use simple tools and teach simple tools to students like Tinkercad, which is a 3D design piece of software. And it's very easy to use, and you can take the results and take them to a 3D printer, or you can just design 3D images like for games or for film. This is something that kids are really interested and can do. It's not hard. You might think, oh my God, 3D math, it's so hard. But the kids don't think so. They're like, we drag a block here, we put a circle on top of it, and they just do it. Tinkering with this physical digital world is also extremely powerful. This connection between what you can see in front of you and hold and touch, and adding smarts to it with microcomputers, means that you can create individual projects of any kind. Toys, games, a glove that reads sign language, ballet slippers that track dance movements. And you can see that this would be interesting to different kinds of kids. And I think part of this maker movement is an invitation to a lot of different people who are today being told, science isn't for you. Science is all about one thing. Math is only about right answers. And yet, The world is full of amazing and wonderful inventions that are related to music and dance and personal passions and mathematics and science and all the usual things we want children to learn. You know, there are small microcomputers that you can buy, even if your kids are remote. If you can get them some of this equipment, like the BBC Microbit is 15 euros. That's a very small investment compared to what you might imagine, like, oh, a robotics kit would cost thousands and thousands, but they don't. This BBC Microbit is available worldwide, and you use free software on the internet to program it. And all of these things, the maker movement is all about connections. Tinkercad, the 3D design software that I showed you, also has a module where you can design electronic interfaces for the microbit. All of these things can come together, and you can help children see the connections between subjects instead of saying math is in the morning and science is in the afternoon. That's not the way the world works. You can also experiment with tools that kids really use. You may have children using Minecraft, and they may not understand the connections between physics and math and science. But if you draw those connections, they can use their experience, their lived experience, and their passion for building realistic objects in Minecraft or fantasy objects in Minecraft. And there's a community of people who care about the same thing. Video production is also a kind of something that people don't think of when they think of the maker movement, but it's a perfect metaphor. You're creating something that you see in your head, you're developing it, you're practicing, you're trying it out, you're doing post-production to get it right, and you're trying it again. And there's all kinds of formats, stop motion, TikTok, and there's all kinds of things you can do. You can emulate the cooking shows that you can see on the internet, or video productions, or anything else. But the act of making a video is also making. And finally, there's one thing that's perfect for these times, and that's programming. If you've been interested in the maker movement and you haven't tried programming, now is the time. It is perfect for these times. It works with the kids in the class. It works with the kids far away. It's something they can do away from your classroom. And there are a lot of programming language that are absolutely perfect for learning. One of them, Scratch, is something you may have experimented with. It's still good. And they've added new tools that help with that physical digital connection, where you can create a physical world that your programmed sprites and cartoons can interact with. And these are being shared all over the world. The code is being shared on Twitter, on websites like the Scratch website, of how you can have kids have this programming experience. Now, do I think technology is the only way to go? No, I think we should expand the toolkit. If building with cardboard is good, why not build a cardboard robot? And that's something that you can do with the robotics kits that are available today. This little cardboard dog can move around under computer control. It has sensors and lights and motors, electronics, feedback, design, all the things you want kids to learn in one package. And Seymour Papert said, if you can use technology to make things, you can make a lot more interesting things, and you can learn a lot more by making them. I truly believe that technology at this time is perfectly positioned to help accelerate children learning the things that we've always wanted them to learn. And if you choose your tools carefully, things that have a low floor, that are easy to use, but have a high ceiling, have a lot of room, they're not just toys, have a lot of room for children to experiment and grow and use them in more and more complex ways, you can do things like that same robotics kit can be used to make a petting zoo where every child makes an animal, and you can connect this to biology and biomimicry and seasons and plants and climates and everything. Or you can use the same toolkit to do real science. And that's the hallmark of the maker movement, is using things in efficient and wonderful and serendipitous ways to learn the things you want to learn and to make the things you want to make. And to me, that's really the essence of STEAM. A lot of people talk about, science, technology, engineering, and math, all good, and adding art, which I think is a terrific addition. But I think a lot of people misunderstand it. They think it's something like decorating a math worksheet or singing a song about mitosis. But I really believe it's more. I think it's about action. I think it's about bringing your own aesthetic sense to what you're working on, about having control over the design process, where something in your head comes out into the world. And once it's in the world, you can make it better. You can share it with others. And so I think of STEAM, I think of the A as the verb of the sentence. It's what you do. It's not just an add-on. And if you think that the maker movement is just about robots or programming, it's not. There's a lot more coming. Every part of science is being made accessible to amateurs and people who have any kind of interest in equipment to join the movement. There's a whole new area of biomaking and biohacking that a lot of teachers are using to help kids connect with the problems of the world they care about, like climate change or plastic pollution. What better way could you solve plastic pollution than to make your own plastic-like materials or styrofoam-like materials out of organic materials? And that's an exploration of biology that's modern and different and fascinating. And teachers all over the world are putting materials and ideas on the web. This is a kit for a biomaking camp that was held remotely this summer that teachers can just use and download and share with their students. Now, the maker movement has also gotten involved with the fight against COVID. The Barcelona Makerspace is out there saying, what can we do as a community to solve these problems? And a lot of students have also done this, making medical equipment, participating in solving this problem that's happening right now. And honestly, it's so important, because helping other people helps you face your own fears. A lot of kids are worried, and rightly so, about what's happening in the world. And we can give them the tools to say, I can do something. And when you hear kids talk, when they've had some experience with authentic, meaningful projects, they say things like this: everything is a lot more simple to make. I can do things really quickly now, that I know how to look at stuff. And that's an incredibly profound statement of ownership, of mindfulness, of empathy, of empowerment, that you feel like you can look at something and then take it and make it your own. And, I love the elegant simplicity of this. This is what we want kids to have. We want them to have the feeling inside of themselves that they can do these things and they can participate in a world that's changing and growing. And no matter what happens, they can be in charge. And so we're going to be able to take some questions and answer your questions in the chat. But my big point today is that making is a framework for the future that we can use today in schools today, no matter if the kids are remote or hybrid or sitting in front of us. And this is the future of learning. And so I thank you very much for your attention. This is exciting. Now we get to the interactive part and we can talk a little bit. So I'm excited for that.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, because you brought so many brilliant ideas ready to take into the classroom. What you said and all the examples you have given are really helpful. We would like to ask you 5 questions to make clearer some aspects that may be useful for our teachers. For example, in the USA, in the USA, how are teachers adapting tinkering and making for students learning at home?
So I realize this is different all over the world. In the United States, last spring, and everyone went through this, a lot of people just sent the students home. School just was over. And in schools that had a philosophy of project-based learning or maker spaces, a lot of teachers created kits of materials that parents could pick up or that students could work with at home. And what's happened over the summer, though, is that we thought we'd be coming back to school in the fall, but we all know what's happened. in the United States, only about 10% of schools brought students back full time. About 20% went completely remote, and about 60-70% tried a combination where in some classes it was, I can't even imagine how a teacher would do this, but you would be teaching students in front of you and you would be teaching to the camera in the back of the room for students who were watching. That seems like an incredibly complex task, and I don't know how people were doing it. And actually now people are saying that that's just not sustainable. And as COVID grew, more and more people sent their students home. Now it's tough because, it's very problematic, and teachers can't teach like they used to. Teachers would walk around and say, how are you doing? Can I help? Can I do this? Especially with projects, they just kept the students on task. They could look around the room and see what's happening. Now, teachers have become better at using tools with Zoom, like breakout rooms and having students work on projects, but it takes time to adjust. Teachers tell me that they feel like first-year teachers all over again. I mean, can you imagine? Every teacher in the world is feeling the anxiety and stress and exhaustion of being a first-year teacher. Nobody knows how to do this successfully. But people have done amazing work, and I think that one of the big ideas of tinkering is that it should be done while the teacher isn't watching. We shouldn't say, okay, kids, now we're all going to tinker and you're all going to keep your cameras on and we're all going to do this right in front of each other. That's not how it works. The beauty of some of these tools is that students can go off and work on their own and on engaging projects that interest them personally. Now, finding these projects and helping guide students is something we're all learning, and is going to take time. It's not a trivial thing to come up with these kinds of projects.
So true. So can we take this time to disrupt and rethink education and make it better, maybe?
So I hear this question all the time. It's like, why are we just duplicating old school online? Why can't we take this time and say, look, we're being thrown into the future, let's take advantage of it. I heard someone say the other day that the pandemic is accelerating history. It's not pausing it, and we know that things like economic disparity cause these gaps, these educational opportunity gaps. And we know that the pandemic is making these disparities worse. Some kids are just not showing up. And it's a tragedy, and we have to address those problems. But I think that we need to acknowledge that the system wasn't working as it was before the pandemic. It wasn't working for a lot of students. They were finding their studies irrelevant to their real lives. And, we have a choice now to give students real and relevant projects to work on, or we can recreate the traditional classroom in Zoom. Last spring, a lot of teachers and students actually had pretty good experiences, considering it was all sort of an emergency. And it's a testament to teachers' professionalism. And the fact that I think students do want to learn. They want to be doing something exciting with their lives. And then, over the summer, a lot of planning happened, and too many schools ended up with rules like students have to wear shoes when they're online. They have to keep their cameras on at all times, and they have to sit up straight. And it's like, why do we think that duplicating the worst of classroom practice is a good idea online? Some schools are mandating 6 or 7 hours of seat time glued to a video screen, which turns the teacher into a performer who can't possibly keep up with the demands of making all these videos and talking to kids for 6-7 hours a day and doing the preparation that they need to do to create these video lessons. And then kids are being told they have to do 6 or 7 hours of homework on top of sitting in front of the screen all day. It's crazy. It's not going to work. And, teachers here are pushing back against that. So to me, this call to bring tinkering time and projects to education is nothing new, but it's also about giving teachers control over their own classes so they can make the right decisions. We proved they could in the spring. And, making education better depends on this kind of trust. We have to trust teachers will do the right thing. Now we can check them. It's not all just everyone go off and, do whatever they want. And we have to trust that students want to learn too. And if there's no trust, the whole thing just becomes a surveillance campaign. And when that happens, the most common instincts for teachers and students is to just game the system, to subvert the system. And that'll never result in the best learning opportunities for everyone.
I cannot agree more with you, but how do we convince parents, other teachers, or administrators that projects can really be the basis for classes?
So this is an ongoing project for teachers. People can't choose from what they've never seen. So the best thing to do is create models of excellence where student projects are central. And then we can show other people that this actually works. Projects and giving students time to do meaningful work doesn't just magically happen. It's not like you can just buy a 3D printer and all of a sudden, school is transformed. We've never been able to improve schools just by going shopping. We keep expecting that we'll buy, this wonderful app or an interactive whiteboard, and then everything will change, and it never happens. In fact, it's the technology, what happens is the technology just kind of gets folded in the old kind of teaching and learning. And it takes time and effort to design projects that are not too hard, not too easy, and really get kids thinking hard and engaged in the effort. Convincing others means you have to convince colleagues. And it's helpful to have colleagues who support you and will have a conversation about what you're doing. And it's extremely helpful to have an administration that looks at remaking education as an ongoing research and development project and not something that you're going to get punished for if you make a mistake. We know when we're inventing the future, we're going to make mistakes, and some of those mistakes are going to actually be the exact thing we were looking for, and we just didn't know it. So it's a continual effort to show people, including students, because a lot of students have gotten used to school the way it is, and they're the ones you have to convince that memorizing things is really not what they should be doing or what the world wants.
That's so true. Un moment, aprofitem per demanar que feu les vostres preguntes en el xat i llavors nosaltres li traduirem, o les voleu fer directament en anglès, i si les feu en català, doncs li traduïm a la Sílvia. Okay, I was just reminding to make questions in the chat.
Perfect.
A fourth question is, do you think, in your opinion, won't this prevent students from learning the rigorous content they need to get to score enough to get to top universities?
Obviously, you can't change, you can't say to kids, oh, we're going to do projects and then say, oh, oops, we forgot to prepare you for university. That's not fair to them. Now, what's happening on the university side is a lot of universities are finding out that, if all of their students are just stressed robots who can only take tests, that's not a good thing either. So a lot of universities in the United States are dropping requirements for standardized entrance exams. And, this is an incredibly good sign that we should, grab onto and say, yes, standardized tests do not prepare students for the real world. Real experiences with real science and real engineering and real math and real art and real music prepare students for the real world. This traditional divide between the real world and the academic world is very harmful. And we've had it for a long time, and it's not serving anyone very well. In many cases, students who are on academic tracks are deprived of deep learning experiences, of doing hands-on projects. And the difference between vocational education and academic education is narrowing by the day. It doesn't exist in the real world. Scientists and engineers do all kinds of different things. They don't just sit around studying charts and writing reports. And everyone in every walk of life uses computers, artists, car mechanics, and physicists. So giving students all kinds of experiences, developmentally appropriate experiences, interesting and fun experiences with lots of different technology prepares them for the real world in a way that I don't think that just taking tests and memorizing does. You know, we can take advantage of this individuality that the maker projects bring to the student. We can respect their ideas and passions and differences. Not every project has to be the same robot. They can be, you know, come out of the heads of different students in completely different ways. And we have to figure out how to assess the work that students do, just like if they all are writing an essay. They all write different essays, and somehow teachers read them and say, you need to improve your grammar, your thoughts aren't, you know, coherent, here's an idea you missed. The same way can be done for science and math and engineering topics. You know, this is also about equity. Equity is just not about having different kids have the same experience. Equity is when we respect each student's unique gifts and we tailor our projects so that those qualities can be expressed in different ways while still learning the math and science we need. And, you know, sometimes people think this is just about, oh, let the kids do whatever they want. That's not what I'm talking about. I think this demeans the importance of the teacher. And the teacher is key in holding projects to high standards and making sure these experiences are meaningful. Designing challenges for students like this isn't trivial. It takes time and effort. And it's important to not give up and to try again. This is where administrators and education leaders can shine, giving teachers permission to try new things and being supportive, not critical, when projects don't go exactly as planned. And it sounds a lot like what we ask teachers to do. We ask students to take chances and make things that have never been done before and study complex topics. You know, teachers and administrators need to do the same kind of thing, to look at education as a project that they are responsible for moving forward into the future. And I think this aspect, this maker mindset, is as important for teachers as it is for students.
Okay, let's talk about challenges. I have a makerspace, but it's being used as a classroom, and all my tools and parts got put away to be safe.
So I hear this all the time. You know, the pandemic caused people to want more classroom space, and in many cases, maker spaces, and maybe some of you have maker spaces, you know, got used for classroom space so you could spread out more. And people were worried about germs and disinfecting, so they put all the tools away, they put all the science away, they put all the experiments away. And so, you know, this is something that, first of all, I should congratulate you if you had a makerspace on what you've already done. I know it's sad that it got put away, but this isn't forever. Your makerspace will come back. And I think that how so many teachers embrace this future. We were making progress, I think, in changing education, and it's sad to see things go in the wrong direction. But this will pass. And in the meantime, a lot of projects can be done with programming. Go deep with the programming, you know, or maybe if you had to put away the 3D printers, but you love the process of 3D printing, you can kind of embrace these constraints. Well, a lot of the lessons about 3D printing was about the logistics of making the 3D printer work. Well, you're freed from all that. You can design amazing things with 3D tools, from Tinkercad that I showed you to professional tools to game design tools. And, you know, if you've lost access to your 3D printer, think about how maybe this is not a bad thing. This is freedom. By embracing the constraint of not having a 3D printer, you don't have to worry about designing unprintable things, right? It's a feature, not a bug. Free yourselves from the constraints of real world design. Be the MC Escher of the 3D world. Tinkercad has a new module that encourages coding and 3D design and simulated circuit design. New software like Blender, which is free, is used by real 3D animators and game design. And these are certainly things that students are interested in. Try building things in Minecraft. There's a lot of things to try out in the design area, even if you aren't able to complete that last step.
Okay, now I am watching the chat and I can see two interesting questions. There are two questions. Maybe you heard several times. This question is, how can we assess learnings coming from STEM? Is it important to make a permanent a follow-up of the different sessions that we are in the classroom doing?
Repeat that last part, the second part again. Assessment.
Yes, they ask, is it important to make a continuous follow-up of the different sessions in the classroom?
So yes and no. I think that we don't have to assess every single minute of everything that a student does. We need to be able to look at the projects that the students complete and certainly be in on some of the process, because that's where the learning is taking place. That's where you can exert influence, ask a question, suggest a new challenge. So that is assessment. It's up to the teacher to do assessment. We seem to think that science and math is very different than the rest of life. In life, we all do things in different subjects in school, in art, in music. A teacher can listen to an orchestra and say, the saxophone is flat, the violin is off time, but you're not like giving them tests. You're not just doing tests, you're playing music. And in the course of playing music, just like in the course of making projects, a teacher who's paying attention and watching carefully sees the things that the students are doing. And the idea of working with your hands on interesting projects is to make the thinking of the child visible, so that the teacher is in on what's happening inside the child's head. Now, you don't have to keep asking them over and over again, because that interrupts their thinking. So it's this balance. How do you watch what's going on without giving, stopping them all the time and saying, explain this, explain this, explain that. I think that project-based learning offers a lot of reading material. We don't have to just stick to Maker as being an example. We have decades of great books, and we explore some of these ideas in Invent to Learn, in the book Invent to Learn, places where you can go and understand how to assess science. Some of the best science educators in the world and the best people who train science teachers have explained these things. And we just need to kind of look back in history a little bit and say, we can do this. We can look at what kids do and make sense out of it. And that's assessment.
Okay. Now the chat is really getting exciting. We have another question. It's innovative projects are very fine, and they can get attention, and they are really good to learn. But how can we do to explain the basics of making? Sometimes this can get boring. Means the projects are really exciting, but maybe not that much the explanations. Is it necessary to explain the basics of the lesson?
So I think that it's a balance, right? I think that the sooner that you can get kids to the doing with a simple project, they will be interested in what the next step is. And then if you have to explain a little bit and then do something else. So, having a long explanation about the history of the maker movement, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially for younger kids. The younger they are, the less you should be explaining what to do. Get them going, doing something. Now, like I said, when you have appropriate tools that have a low floor and a high ceiling, it's easier to do that. If you don't have to spend a lot of time explaining the tools and the history and what we're doing, and can just get kids going in something, if you have and have chosen good tools, it really helps you create opportunities for students to start their work right away. And then they can ask questions. How can I make this better? What does this do? What's this called? Maybe then you suggest reading a book about Leonardo da Vinci. But, unless you've done something, it's just another dry lesson in something you don't really, care about. Now, of course, there are always the kids who will do whatever you tell them to and be excited about everything. The problem is that narrow band is not the only kids that you should be focused on. there has to be a lot of pathways into this knowledge, leaving books around the classroom, suggesting videos to watch at home, having multiple projects going at the same time will hook different kids into different aspects. Excuse me. I was done.
Okay, there is another question. What kind of competencies do you think teachers should have to carry on making projects in the classroom?
So look, obviously in some school systems, there are professional requirements that you need to operate equipment. Like if something's dangerous, like a laser cutter is an absolutely fantastic tool, but there is some danger to it. If you need to have a certification or whatever, that's fine. But in general, for a lot of these tools, the most important thing is to have a maker mindset of your own, to be curious, to want to learn, with children as colleagues, and say, if I don't know how to do this, we're going to figure it out together. That modeling of the capability of learning something new is very important to kids. They don't often see adults saying, we're going to figure this out together. And then you can speak out loud your concerns and your fears and the things that you're going through in your head, teaching students how to approach the unknown. I think it's especially important when you don't know something to not hide it from your students. It may not feel right all the time, but modeling that everyone is a lifelong learner, that there's a lot of things that we don't know how to do, but we can figure it out together, is a very powerful stance for kids to see.
So true. I see there are no more questions in the chat, but I have a last question that happens several times to our teachers who want to integrate technology in art classes. Are we forced finally to ensemble robots? Or maybe we can find different ideas to mix technology and art.
Yeah, there are so many things you can do. And the nice part about what's happening in the world today is there are a lot of people out there to help. There are citizen science projects that you can join. You might, especially if you haven't been able to see your cousins or your grandparents, there are projects where you can join and count birds or bees and in the world and share that knowledge with other scientists who are worried about these kinds of things. There are cooks who are cooking online, who are sharing their ideas about, how to make the world a better tasting place. And, some kids might be very interested in that, and they can dive deeply into these very different kinds of projects. The world is, there's museums that are offering tours. You can go visit the British Museum, or, most of the museums of the world have put a lot of their collections online for you to see. And so, getting involved with what's outside the classroom, I think is very important in these times, because teachers can't do it all. You can't be online all day and prepare lessons and deal with questions and parents and administrators. It's overwhelming, and it's not sustainable. And it's not fair to burn teachers out like that. But I do think it's important for teachers to look outside and find some of these resources that are authentic and interesting and will allow kids to explore on their own. Just introduce something and say, okay, tomorrow you're going to tell me what you visited about the exhibit that you saw at the British Museum. And that's it. You're done, right? Because the kids are going to come back and say, I saw this, I saw that. And if they don't quite know how to handle that kind of open-ended project, that's something you can teach them too. You can show them you know, how to you know, put things in a Google Doc or make a video, which they probably already know and never thought about making a video for class, because here's school over here and here's my life over there. Helping kids connect these things is useful in these times. You know, you can also use other students to help you. This is the perfect time for peer mentoring, for asking older students to make online resources for younger students, to come in and read a book, to, you know, you don't have to do everything. And it helps the older students too. This is a win-win of teachers need help, students want to help. Why not have students participate? And when students are participating, they can become allies. They can become advocates for what you're trying to do in the classroom.
Okay, now the two last questions before to stop. Do you think that sometimes in these projects, teachers and students are more worried about products than process, maybe?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the good news is we've taught them to be anxious. We've taught them to focus on grades, right? So we can unteach them. Now, it might not happen instantly. They're not going to believe you when you say, oh, we're just going to have a good time. We're just going to explore this topic. They're like, I know what's coming, a test. So there's a trust issue that has to be developed in creating new models of learning. And the kids who are best at school are the ones who are good at getting these grades and using the system to their advantage. Why wouldn't they? It's not sneaky or manipulative. We've taught them to ask these questions. We've taught them to say, how many bullet points do you want? How many slides do you want? How many bubbles in the mind map? How many items in the lab notebook? We've taught them that these meaningless things are the only thing that matters. And we can't be mad at them when we say, oh, I changed my mind. It's not important anymore. They're not going to believe us. So this is a process. This is a process of introducing projects to students, of assuring them that the mistakes they make are not going to result in an F, in a bad grade. They're not going to result in criticism or some sort of, you know, negative outcome. But that actually mistakes can be something that happens on the way to making something better. It takes time. It takes time and focus on continually telling the students that we're doing something different here.
Thank you so much. And now there is the last question. It's about very busy classrooms. Do you think is it possible to implement making education in classes with 30 students and only one teacher to guide them? What is, in your opinion, the ideal student ratio in the classroom?
So yes, and it's more difficult. There's no way, I'm not going to pretend that this is all magically going to happen no matter how many kids you have in the classroom. But if you're working on projects that actually creates divides, where some students might be collaborating, some students might be working on something that's a little more independent, and you can focus on a smaller group of students who needs help on something immediate. If you're all doing the same thing at exactly the same time, that's what creates the bottleneck. That's what creates the problem for the teacher, is they have to be everywhere all at once. And it's just more efficient to stand in the front of the room and tell everyone the same thing at the same time. But if you have a project-based classroom where students are doing different things, you can spend your time walking around. Now, how do we do that when there's kids on the other end of a Zoom camera? It becomes even more of an art, and teachers are figuring this out every day using breakout rooms. But things like having kids doing programming projects means that you can have very short lessons about some small aspect of programming, give a challenge, and then let the students all go off and do it on their own. It doesn't matter how many you have then, they're doing their own thing. And then you just have to make sure that you have time for people to come and ask questions. And even young kids might benefit from, the idea of office hours where they know you'll be available to help them, or maybe another student is available to help them. Sometimes with things like programming, there are students who are very good at it and can be your, can be your helper. Even sometimes in the same classroom, or you bring someone in from a slightly older classroom who's done that programming work before, and you help them understand how to help younger kids. It's doable. I understand the question that it's not easy, but none of this is easy. But it's so valuable. We're introducing kids to the future that they're going to have, and we have to be flexible and try new things. Nobody knows what the future is going to hold. I mean, imagine us all a year ago saying, what was 2020 going to be like? We would all be wrong, and now we kind of have realized how precious this time is that we have with each other, and the ability to focus on the moment and just take advantage of the kids we have in front of us today, the colleagues we have next to us to solve these problems, and helping us all move forward in this kind of crazy time we're living in.
Okay, thank you very much to answer all of our questions, and it has been a real pleasure to learn from you. We really hope next time to have the opportunity to welcome in Barcelona instead of having you online. Moltíssimes gràcies a totes i a tots els que heu seguit la intervenció en directe. Podeu recuperar el webinar i també informació complementària al nostre nodes del web de Claustre Obert. Moltíssimes gràcies. Thank you so much, Sylvia.
Thank you. I hope to be in Barcelona once again soon.
Thank you.